Imagine playing in a poker game where it costs $1 million just to sit down.
A $2 million pot.
14 players flew in from around the world to play in exactly this game. We had huge pots, big hands,
Unbelievable.
massive winners, and massive losers.
Takes a walk.
Today, we take a full recap on the $1 Million Game, 2nd edition. Do you dream to one day play with poker players in a game like this? Well, then you're going to have to learn how to play over at upswingpoker.com. I'd recommend checking out our monthly subscription, The Lab, or hop in with Lucid GTO's trainer to train against perfect play in order to up your game against the machine. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the players in the $1 Million Game. 14 different players entered the arena over 4 days of play on this edition of the $1 Million Game. But before we jump into those players, let's talk a little bit about what exactly went down last year. Last year, we saw games being much more full ring rather than short-handed, and many more players played in the game. We saw 19 different players enter the arena last year over the 4 days of play. Those 19 players, we saw the biggest winner walking away with $1.8 million, and the biggest loser at just under $1 million. No one actually lost a full $1 million, except for me because I kept playing after the show and lost a big pot, so you could argue I was the biggest loser. Nice. But wasn't it really about the friends we made along the way?
You win.
I know I win, probably.
Uh-oh.
The question was just if I'm shoving or not, dude.
What the fuck?
No, it wasn't. It was about the $1 million. Anyway, we can't have a good discussion about this year's $1 Million Game without understanding the context from last year. Last year's $1 Million Game had a lot of excitement, and I think generally speaking, it lived up to the billing. Although the first couple of days there were some complaints for a couple of different reasons. The first day tended to play pretty conservative, and then the second day the buy-in was dropped to $500,000. All in all, I think people walked away from this feeling like it was a success, primarily due to the last day. The best metric for deciphering if people enjoyed a show or not, typically speaking, is just to look at the viewership. Now, sometimes people might tune in and be disappointed, but generally speaking, the more views that a show gets, the more popular that it was. We saw the last day of $1 Million Game 1 go for 13 or 14 hours with over 1 million views on the first show and 850,000 people tuned in for the last 3 hours on the second. That, my friends, is a big stream. Interesting note, there have actually been 4 bigger streams in the history of Hustler Casino Live, with their biggest being the infamous Jack Forehand for Robbie Jade Lou. Lots of people had opinions and thoughts on that one, but also a Mr. Beast and Ninja stream, as well as another Ivy and Garrett stream, and even a super high stakes one with Mickey, Alan Keating, and JRB. Now, you might be asking yourselves, why is it that some of these streams were actually more popular than $1 million on the table? And generally speaking, it's because they have storylines. The Jack 4 storyline with Robbie vs. Garrett is one that we will never forget in poker. Also, when super well-known influencers like Mr. Beast, Ninja, Ludwig, all these guys come into play, and you include celebrity poker players like Tom Dwan and Phil Hellmuth, you have a recipe for massive success. And that's what I believe it takes for shows to really be at the absolute top of viewership. You need to have heroes, you need to have villains, you need to have people that will bring in new viewers, and you have to have a perfect cocktail that brings in the show. The final day of $1 Million Game 2023 had a peak viewership of 59,000 viewers. As far as I understand, this is the all-time peak for live viewership outside of the WSOP main event. So what exactly happened this year compared to last year? Well, I would still say this year was a success for $1 Million Game 2, with many of the shows reaching hundreds of thousands of viewers. That said, viewership was notably lower, hovering consistently around 30,000, although on the last day I think it did get to around 40. The point remains this was a little bit less anticipated and had a little bit less viewership than its predecessor. So what exactly happened and what exactly went wrong? In my opinion, the lineups were just not as compelling. I of course understand the irony here, saying that I think I should have been involved in more of them because I wanted to play, but nonetheless, the numbers do speak for themselves. This year, this game was a little less popular, and I can also say anecdotally, I saw A lot less people talking about this game leading up to it than I did in 2023. With the backstory out of the way, let's jump in and talk about our 14 players in the 2024 version. We start off with a new-ish player to the high-stakes world, Action Dan. Dan has been playing on many high-stakes streams at Hustler and Lodge. His results so far going in a $1 million game were quite good, playing an incredibly aggressive style. His background is unknown, however he is from Canada. Next up is the popular high-stakes poker player, Alan Keating. His background isn't exactly known, although I can say from personal experience I did see him playing poker many years ago. It's unclear whether his money came from his family or his investments or playing poker itself, but whatever it might be, Alan only plays at the highest stakes. He is from America. Our next player, Brandon Stevens, is a recreational poker player who also owns a chain of car dealerships. I'm sure this guy has many other investments as well, and is an extremely successful person. ICT Moxie's Twitter profile says he's a father first, entrepreneur second, with 19 car dealerships and 60 health clubs, 2 pro hockey teams, real estate developer, and part-time poker player. Other than that, though, doesn't seem like he does too much. Heading over to the east part of the country, Charlie Hook is our 4th player, hailing from Philadelphia, as you might be able to tell when he wears his signature Phillies hat. Hook made his living coming up in the online poker streets and then transitioning to the private game scene, where he has built up quite the bankroll to be able to play in $1 million games. Our 5th player is me. I'm in there. I'm one of the players. Moving on. Our next player is known as Hands. Not much is known about Hands, I guess including his full name, but according to High Roll Poker, he is from the US, and according to his Twitter profile, he is crypto lucky. So, there you have it. Continuing the trend of players with not much information available, our next player is Peter. Peter is from, I assume, China because he can only speak Chinese. The only other thing I know about Peter is that he likes crushing people's souls with massively good hands, coolering people and stacking them left, right, and center. So he's pretty much like all other poker players. Poker player Raul, not much known about him either, other than that he is from India and is friends with Santosh, which brings us to Santosh, well-known high-stakes player. Santosh is originally from India and has been playing high-stakes poker around the world for the last year or two. In fact, he's actually won a couple of tournaments over at Triton, and I actually played with him last time I was in London for a Triton event. Small note on Santosh, he really is a very nice player to play with or be around. He's a super upbeat, nice guy. You never hear a bad word out of him. This brings us to our next player, Steve. Again, not much known about Steve other than he is from the Chicago area and is extremely interested in what my business is so that he can open up a competing room.
We're getting deep into the business. This guy wants to know some numbers.
Going to the next strip mall, or I'm opening one in Marcos or whatever it's called.
You're doing some competitive research?
Yeah. I want to see what price I have to cut it to take your room from.
These $1 million games are tough.
Probably could have answered a couple less questions. Steve also known for his traditional minimum bet, throwing 1K out there into all kinds of pots. Not a move you see all too often. Our following player is world famous Stanley Tang, one of the co-founders of DoorDash, also dabbles in high stakes poker. The maybe number 1 favorite player from this show was Texas Mike. Running massive bluffs, having huge swings, this guy made the show entertaining for everyone. Texas Mike is known for wearing his signature hat with the T on it. No, that is not Tennessee. That is the baseball version of the Austin Longhorns, where he attended Austin University, or the University of Texas at Austin. I think those might be the same. I don't know. I didn't graduate college. Down to our last couple of players remaining. One of them was on the show last year and is back and ready for action. Tom Dwan makes his return to $1 million game, playing on every single day this show ran, although there was a little bit of drama on day 4. And our final player was the mysterious Thomas, showing up with a hoodie and face mask. Nobody could tell who it was until Thomas came forward just yesterday. Thomas Keeling tweeted out saying, "Announcement, I will not be playing in the $1 million game next year. You show up, you try your best, you lose $1 million, and this is the thanks that you get." Look at these posts. People attacking this man for losing millions of dollars on the show. Just downright disrespectful. Now Thomas is even tweeting trying to figure out how to get his graph taken down on High Roll Poker, showing that he's down 2.7 million. I don't have the heart to tell him. I bet a lot of you guys didn't realize that this was actually my video editor. This is a lot of money for Thomas. I mean, we do share our revenue here on the channel, but he's going to have to keep making videos until he's dead to get unstuck. Maybe have a little respect next time. In all seriousness, this is not my Thomas, although the memes are great. This is a mystery Thomas, apparently from Portugal or Europe. Yeah, so I think that there's a lot going in to protect this man's identity. I don't really want to deep dive that, so I won't. Those are our players. What exactly happened over the course of this week? Here we can see the results of all of the players in the game over the week. This was created by Joey Ingram, who had some excellent coverage of this online. I also have to appreciate that he included the decimal places on every result here. I mean, it just makes sense. But anyway, massive results here. Peter winning 4.9 million in a week. This is the sickest, most epic cash game run I can remember. 4.9 million in 1 week. This is something that just doesn't happen. This is the biggest win in cash game poker history over the course of a few days by a ton. I mean, this is just absolutely insane. There are only a few people that got anywhere remotely close to this kind of winnings. I mean, we've seen Roble, Tom Dwan, a couple guys approached that in total winnings, but not over the course of 4 days. He only played 3 days and he won 4.9 million. We're going to break down his run in one of our storylines a little bit later. Other notable winners, Alan Keating and Santos both winning over $1 million. Alan actually won more than our biggest winner at all last year, so would have been a new high score if Peter didn't dwarf it with just an incredible string of sessions. We ended up seeing Steve walking away up 800,000, Brandon up 700,000 as well. Interesting note here, not a lot of people that play professionally involved, but very recreational heavy on the winners. You know, maybe Alan Keating could say is not a recreational player, but and then Hands as well. But other than that, we definitely have a good series of recreational players winning, and many of the people that you might call pros losing. Myself, Hook, Tom Dwan, Action Dan, several of these guys all having losing sessions. So the distribution of money, maybe not what you would anticipate. Peter being a recreational player and smashing the game, probably not what you would expect either, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Our losers, a lot of people in the $500,000 to $1 million-ish range, but our big losers with 4 people over $1 million. Tom Dwan lost 700K, not quite at that $1 million threshold, but still not the most ideal result for him. Action Dan losing over $1 million. Raul, just 1 session, 1.6 million. Texas Mike losing 2.2 million, and Tomas losing 2.7. Some of the biggest losses we've ever seen sustained on any poker show in the history of poker. We know all the players now, and we know how they did. Let's jump into the biggest storylines from this week of games. We have to start this off with the incredible run that Peter went on. A run that was so good that I started to see people worried that this game was rigged online. I can assure you this game was not rigged. This was not funneling money to Peter, guys. I know the conspiracy theorists come out, but I can understand the skepticism when a player wins almost $5 million. In fact, he lost a very large pot right at the end that if he had not lost, in fact, if he had won that somehow, he would have been up $6 million or more dollars. Now, it's important for us to know the buy-in's $1 million. So 4.9 million is only a little under 5 buy-ins. However, it is a lot of big blinds. However, there were many straddles in some of these games, making the stakes huge. So while this is a crazy run, it is certainly in the realm of possibility. I tweeted out during this, I had not seen a run this good since Ashman won $10 million in 2 weeks of PLO on Full Tilt back in the day. If you guys remember that, it means you're old. But besides that, that was an insane run too. I've not seen something like this since then. Breaking down by day, we saw Peter win $1.5 million on the first session, almost exactly $1 million on the second session, and $2.4 million on the third session. What made this especially epic was that Peter would oftentimes show up late, he would sit up for hands, and he would sometimes leave early. In fact, there was quite some drama on his second session where he decided to leave fairly early with a bunch of the winnings right after I'd bluffed them in a pot. I hope unrelated. If If it's not, it was a bad bluff from me. After racking up and leaving, the internet exploded with people that were upset that the big winner walked away from the table with all of the chips on the table. However, it has since been confirmed by Nik Airball as well as Tom Dwan over on Twitter that Peter was not planning on playing along for this day anyway. Also, Feldman has come forward saying that he knew about this but didn't say anything because he didn't want to hurt the game. I've got some mixed feelings on that. I feel like if you run a game and you know one of the players is only going to be there for a few hours and you don't tell the players to hurt the game, while it will make sure the game runs, it does also make it so that those players will go through a negative experience afterwards. I guess you could look at it either way, but whatever it might be, I do think that we should not be attacking Peter for leaving early if he did say beforehand that he had to leave early, which it appears he did. But before we jump into some of the hands that produced this massive result, let's just take a few seconds to appreciate the pure size of these stacks of chips. This day 3 stack is nuts. This thing peaked near $5 million, $4.5 to $5 million. I don't think we've ever seen a stack that big on a stream. I think it's not even remotely close. We've seen some $1 million stacks, of course. We've seen a couple of multi-million-dollar stacks, but $5 million? Peter's sitting on a stack that most people could retire for the rest of their life with. That's what he's playing with today on the show. Someone's life. I debated making this video just a big picture of Peter's stack. I might still do it. Video's not out yet. Point remains, crazy run, tons of chips. Let's take a look at some of the biggest hands. I don't want to review these hands too deeply because I went through that already. If you want to check that out on my channel, I made some videos beforehand breaking these things down. But the big ones from day one, we saw right out of the gate a massive hand where he has pocket tens against Tom Dwan and manages to just bang off top boat on the turn. Tom couldn't get away, and that's going to be a recurring theme for Tom in a lot of these hands that Peter plays.
Torture. One of the best to ever do it in the torture chamber.
Sorry, guys. Dirty cheese. Sorry.
Take your time, man.
I feel like I'm for sure beat, but I don't think I can fold. Too dumb to fold. There's like fucking... It's like 600 something K, or 620 or some shit.
Oh no, Durr goes down. 1.1 million in the middle goes to Peter. The first $1 million pot goes to Peter.
Top boat ends up being good. Tom can't fold the river, and Peter's off to the races. There was only one other massive Peter hand on the day where he calls a 3-bet, a pretty large 3-bet with pocket 7 against Action Dan's Kings, and he gets the money flop hitting a 7. The hand actually plays a little bit more passively than you might imagine, but ultimately Peter does decide to check raise the turn small and bet the river, and Action Dan just can't get away. Peter's full house takes it down for $1 million pot. There was one other big Peter hand actually before we move on to day 2 where he ends up with middle trips in a 3-bet pot where he's got Tom out kicked by 1. This hand was actually pretty interesting because the players went to war on the turn raising when they maybe should have slowed down at some point. And then at the end, Peter only has a couple 100,000 more to call and decides to take his time and think it over.
Tom's got to be feeling pretty good. Little does he know, he's still behind. This is going to hurt even more for Tom, assuming he doesn't get there.
You said call, right?
You call, right? Call. He calls. He announced calls. Once or twice?
Another $1 million pot. Peter, 84%.
You call it.
没关系。
你说你说一次还是2次？你说。You.
Oh, 2 OK， 没关系。
Two OK. Two OK.
All right, 2 boards.
Two.
We're going to see 2 rivers, $1 million in the middle.
2 times.
Tom Dwan on the ropes.
It's all in, so I don't care. It's fine. 2개对。
Twice. Confirmed, right?
2 times.
2 times.
I knew your intent wasn't ill, so it doesn't matter.
It was not, well, how can it affect the action? He's already on.
I know, but you throw a chip in.
There's Jays in the chat. Tons of Jays in the
I'm
chat.
not complaining. So it doesn't matter.
All right, let's go. 2 times. Ready?
Let's go. 1 for Peter. $500,000 locked up. Another 1 for Peter.
Yeah.
Damn, I'm right there, right?
Yeah.
All $3 million pots. Headed to the man in seat number 2.
Tom might think he's good at that point, but ultimately, Peter makes the call, gets the bad news, and books a colossal day 1 victory. So Peter's up 1.5 million coming into day 2. Day 2 was a shorter session, but he picks up right where he left off, hitting a full house against Tom Dwan in a spot I foolishly tried to bluff the flop on into 2 players. Nice play, Doug. Regardless, the river rolls off top boat. Massive, massive river here for Peter.
Dwan betting for value here. He has no reason to think that his straight isn't good. And he bet 72,000, and Peter has the stones. He's got the absolute nutter balls. 191,000 over to Peter. There's the reaction from Dwan. Yeah. After just a brutal day yesterday, it continues in day 2.
What's going on?
$415,000 pot. Dwan with the straight.
My brain's not working enough to find a language.
What a cagey check back from Peter.
Don't ever say, right? Shit's so fast, too. Shit's so fast.
There's the call.
Oh, yeah.
And a little bit of a slow roll as he says nuts.
What can Tom Dwan do? This is a really tough spot for Tom. Again, broke these down in the other videos, but the point of the matter is Tom bets the river, thinks it over, and he just can't lay it down. The other big hand for this day was a hand between Peter and Action Dan once again. This time they square off, and Action Dan has the pocket 7s and flops the set, but it's not going to go well for him with a massive pot brewing going into the river, with Peter drawing to just 2 outs, and by golly gee, there they are. King rolls in on the river, boat over boat, and now Peter gets paid once again from Action Dan. Another massive win here. coming in with a $1 million win on day 2. Peter is up $2.5 million coming into his biggest session yet. The final session was a super long and super epic one. So there are many big hands that happened, but I'm going to try and cover just the few that were the largest and the most impactful to the overall result for Peter in this game. One of them comes pretty early. Once again, Peter picking up right where he left off, where he ends up with a gut shot and a flush draw against Stanley Tang's top set. In this hand, Peter makes a pretty nice play and decides to raise the turn, representing a set or a straight. And Stanley decides just to trap his opponent with top set. Again, also pretty reasonable play there from Stanley. Unfortunately for Stanley, he cannot withstand what the poker god's will is. As the heart rolls in on the river, the 9 of hearts giving Peter a flush. And now it's just a question of how much value can he get. Carves out a relatively small bet size, which is going to be tough for Stanley to get away from. And he certainly tries to.
Very treacherous spot here for top set in a limp pot. Peter's bet is pretty small. But what are the bluffs at this point? Peter check raised the turn and then continued betting when the flush came in.
What do I even beat here?
Is it possible Peter could have something like 2 pair? I kind of doubt it. There is the call, and Peter wins a 624K pot.
But no man has ever gotten away from top set, other than Hands. Hands actually did get away from top set last year versus Rampage. But other than that, no man has ever gotten away from top set.
Unbelievable.
We got a game!
Wow.
Our next big hand is actually a very well played hand for Peter, not a cooler for once. The hand goes, he re-raises ace king pre-flop, Brandon calls with ace 10. Peter bets 8-8-5 flop, Brandon calls. Turns an 8, very weird turn. Basically, now all draws are pretty much worthless and pairs are really strong. Peter checks ace king, Brandon decides to turn ace 10 to a bluff and bets. Peter check calls. River is a 6. Peter checks and Brandon fires 217,000, and Peter does decide to go ahead and check call. Very nicely he played hand from Peter here to put his stack up over 2 million, not buying what Brandon's selling and finding a nice light hero call to add some good play into the mix with all of the coolers.
Superhero call from Peter, and Brandon gets the doom zoom. Emotional damage.
One thing that you might see too, when players are really doing well, they're a little more likely to go with their reads and instincts. And so people will oftentimes say it's playing with confidence. I think we're starting to see some of that to kind of mix into these hands with Peter. Our next hand for Peter. Peter calls an open here with 10-9 offsuit, as does Thomas. Brandon squeezing with the ace-king suited. Everyone calls. 4-way to the flop. Both 10-9 players flop top pair. Raul tries to take a stab here with just a 3. Peter calls, Brandon calls. A little bit loose here from Brandon on the flop, in my opinion, with just the 2 overcards. Kind of funny that a 10-9 also got out of the way there, so it cleared it up for Peter a little bit. Checks to Peter, 10-9 on the turn. Very deep stacks. Can see some logic for both bet or check, but Peter does decide to bet. Now with the backdoor flush draw, Raul is going nowhere. Club on the river will give him a flush. River makes the straight for Peter. Nice run out here for the 10-9. Can definitely go for some value. And he does, and Raul lets it go here with the flush draw. Peter building. Approaching the $3 million mark now. Up $3.5, $4 million on the week. This next big 3-way hand starts off with a shot of Peter's stack. And guess what, my friends? That's where it's going to end. But Stanley opens it up with king, queen of clubs. Keating just flats ace-king suited. Peter now pocket queens decides to squeeze. Stanley calls here. Stanley short stack here decides to make the call. I really expected Keating to back raise in this spot, but he decides just to call as well, which is kind of interesting. And we're off to the races here. 3-way on the flop. Santos, of course, in there with the 10-9 as well. Pot brewing. 7-7-6 gutter for Santosh. Overpair for Peter. Other two players, not too much. Keating does have 2 overs in the backdoor nut flush draw. Peter bets 45K small bet here on the flop. Then the field out a little bit. Keating does make the call. Santos calls here with a gut shot. 300K in the middle going into the turn. 4 creating a backdoor flush draw. Now Alan Keating has the nut flush draw to go along with his 2 overs. How does Peter want to play this on the turn? I can see bet or check both being pretty reasonable. Does decide to check. Now Keating springs to life. Betting the turn. A little bit scary here to bet the turn for Keating because if your opponent check jams, you're probably going to have to call it off. But kind of ugly here with just the nut flush draw on a paired board. Regardless, Peter now thinking it over. Carves out the chips and does ultimately end up calling. River inbound. Insane sick action card. Queen of spades. Front door flush gets in. Peter Rivers top boat. And Keating knows what he has to do.
All in from Keating.
All you can eat.
Snap.
All in and a call.
A $2 million pot. Peter Rivers a full house. Keating bluffs it off. Oh no, Keating
Send me $1 million, would you?
goes down. Peter just rivers a boat.
Jam right in to basically the stone cold nuts here. Shipping all the chips over. And make room, guys, because we've got a lot more chips incoming on this gigantic stack. Peter's stack now breaks the $4 million barrier. He has won another $1 million. Keating has to try and get some reload. Some look at that stack. That's just insane. My lord, this number of chips. Whew. I wonder if we'll ever see a stack again that big in poker. I guess inflation. Inflation or something. Anyway, there you have it. Peter, over 4 million. We didn't see too many big hands from Peter after this, and we are at around the peak of the run. But let's take a look at the hand that finally ended the run. Peter, ace-5 offsuit. Calls here in the hijack. $4.2 million stack. Keating looks down, king-jack of clubs. $35,000 to go. We got some huge pots here, guys. Imagine $35,000 raise. We haven't seen the flop yet. Single raise pot. 80K in the middle. Keating bets on ace-9-4, drawing pretty dead here against Peter's top pair. Peter going nowhere, does make the call. Taking a turn. 2 flush draws once again, a little bit similar to the last hand we just saw. What's Keating going to do now with his gutter? He's going to barrel. $150,000 to go. Full-size pot bet. Peter going nowhere with top pair, making the right read. His opponent's full of it. Yep, still top pair. Carves out the calling chips. Does decide to make the call, taking a river. And it's really a pretty incredible beat here on the river. Not that Peter can complain about beats, but man, what a beautiful river here for Keating. Man, you just can't pick it better. There's 2 offsuit queens in the deck, guys. The 2 make flushes. This is the best of the best, the cream of the crop. And Keating goes for a massive overbet. Now Peter in the tank. I want to say this too. Some people felt like Peter was angling here as he tanks and starts pounding his chips on the table. I really don't think that he was. I think he was just pumping himself up to make a decision. That said, it's probably better to not make call-like motions. But I also might chalk this up to a little bit of language barrier. Regardless, I don't think he's trying to get Keating to do something and make a read off of that. I just think he's pumping himself up towards the end of this call, and ultimately he's not going to get away from this, which is a pretty huge hero call, guys. A lot of hands got there. King jack, jack 8, ace 10, ace 9, ace queen all beat him. It's not going to be ace king, but you know, a lot of hands do beat him here. Sets, but it's not even that many bluffs. 8-7, low hearts, low spades. Gotta make a pretty specific read here to call. After much deliberation, Peter does find the call button and sticks it in. Run coming to an end, and that's going to be it from Peter. He says to call tonight after that.
Oh, Peter's taking a walk. He's steamed up. Close the doors. Shut the casino down. Nobody's going anywhere.
So where does that leave us? Well, if we go to all-time TV cash game rankings, according to highrollpoker.com, we can see Peter third place, up 3,300 spots. So not the biggest winner of all time from that. He was down $1 million going into these sessions. So if he was not, he would have actually moved into second, passing Tom Dwan. Andrew Roble still the biggest winner overall, playing 170 hours, winning 5.7 million. I think the thing that really does it for me on this Peter story is just the amount of money won per hand. So let's just say he played 3 days and he played for, 20-ish hours, 18 hours, something like that. He wasn't there the whole time. So let's say 18 hours. Let's say he's getting 30 hands an hour, but he took a lot of breaks. So, maybe he's getting, and TV hands take longer. So let's say 20, 25 hands an hour. Let's say he's getting 20 hands an hour. The guy played like 400 hands, I think, 300 to 400 hands, and he won 4.9 million over 300 hands. Let me just do a little bit of math here. So we got, let's say 350 hands, about 350. So 4.9 million divided by about 350. This guy won $14,000 a hand this week. So next time you're playing in your local game, you're having a good session, just know there was a guy that won $14,000 a hand. A hand. Does Peter have cards? He gets $14,000. Wouldn't want to play in that game. Actually, I would want to play in that game. Anyway, that's the conclusion of one of the sickest poker runs of all time. But don't worry, we've got plenty more stories left to tell, including the rise and fall of Texas Mike. For those of you familiar with the poker streaming world, Texas Mike needs no introduction. He doesn't play often, but when he does, he plays at some of the highest stakes, and he plays a crazy style, playing almost every hand and frequently going all in totally blind. Texas Mike is well known for playing with his buddies in Chicago. Maybe that name should be different. But anyway, he's famous for playing with his buddies in Chicago, and these guys are nuts. In fact, they came and played a show at my card room, Lodge Card Club, where Texas Mike turned 10K into 150,000. I think I said something at the table along the lines of, well, you're going to be winning today, man. And he said, you don't know how I play. In retrospect, I was dead wrong.
He goes all in, rips it. Snap call from Freddie.
Wow.
$156,000.
He ended up losing all of it back and more that stream by playing one of the most wild styles I've ever seen. Then he went over to Hustler Casino Live and played some of the exact same poker, although he did issue a beatdown one of those days.
Oh, yeah.
The river is a 10.
So not fair.
Ryan loses a $400,000 pot on the river.
Entering the $1 million game, Texas Mike was one of the most anticipated players. And on day one, he came out of the gate swinging, quickly ending up positive and maintaining a win for the entire day, ending up over $500,000 on the day, which is especially impressive when you consider that Peter was clobbering everyone. Only so many people can win when playing a game of poker. On that day, he played one of the most famous hands ever, an ode to Doyle Brunson. The hand begins with Texas Mike calling a raise out of the straddle with 10 deuce off. Texas Mike, an action player, frequently straddles to make the blinds bigger. 10 deuce off, not a hand you want to play versus a raise, but this hand, Texas Mike decided that he wanted to have an ode to the late Doyle Brunson, who passed away just last year. And Texas Mike certainly made that happen. Check calling a flop of ace 5-4 with just a bad gut shot, and then on a turn that gave his opponent the nuts, check raising to $50-something thousand, looking to play aggressive on rivers as well. Opponent makes the call, and Hook's taking a river, hopes for a brick, gets an ace instead. Once again, Texas Mike checks, you'd think giving up on it, but this is where this hand gets even more crazy, with Hook deciding to bet the river as an overbet, and Texas Mike check raising all in with just 10 high. You can see the pain on Hook's face. This is not what you want to see when the board pairs. Representing only ace-6 or sixes, this is a bold play. And this is what makes Texas Mike so entertaining to watch. At any point, this man could go all in for every last chip, regardless of the number of dollars in front of him. Ultimately, this one managed to get through, and Texas Mike's bluff sent him on the way to victory for day 1, riding high, going into day number 2. Texas Mike was scheduled to come back for the second day, but he tweeted out saying, "Unfortunately, I won't make day 2. Heart is feeling horrible and have to rest for now. Really hoping to feel better and play again this week. Thanks to those reminding me to put health first and not push it. Heart, hook 'em." I assume that this tweet means that Texas Mike has some kind of heart condition. And obviously, if you get to a point where you have some kind of heart condition, then you want to make sure to take it easy. It's one of your most important organs, maybe your most important organ. You will die if your heart stops working. Day 3, Texas Mike was back in action, buying in for a cool million and immediately starting to build his stack right where he left off, winning some key pots out of the gate. Unfortunately for Texas Mike, this was about to come to a quick end. In a $1.5 million pot, Texas Mike raised the flop with top pair, and his opponent Brandon Stevens had flopped a set. Brandon then back jammed the flop, trying to make it look like some kind of draw. Texas Mike didn't know what to do.
Come on.
And Brandon moves all in. There are certainly hands that Texas Mike can beat.
Sorry guys, just take a minute.
Take your time, just make the wrong decision.
Yeah, I know. That's what's gonna happen.
Facing a $723,000 all-in. I think you can take a couple of minutes on this one. Fascinating to hear Texas Mike kind of verbalize his thoughts as he works this out.
Longest I've ever only one 9-deuce suited, bro. Longest I ever heard you be quiet.
Yeah.
Once.
And Texas Mike has just made the call. He worked it out, thought about it. We have a $1.5 million pot, and it's queen 9 versus set of 4s. Texas Mike drawing dead. The 3 of hearts on the turn ends it for him. And that is a monster pot. And just like that, Brandon Stevens is now even. He's actually up $27,000 on the night. Texas Mike, who was up over $500,000, is now down.
A very difficult situation here. Your opponent is representing a set. You have only a pair, but if your opponent has a flush draw, you're definitely getting the odds to call. It's a spot that most players would lay down, and it's probably correct to do so. But if you feel like you have a read, you don't want to let your opponent off the hook. It's also worth noting that Brandon was currently stuck on the session, and that might have factored into Texas Mike's decision. Ultimately, Texas Mike made the call, and Brandon said specifically, run it once, and he held to win this $1.5 million pot. Brandon was now even, Texas Mike was now even as well, and this is where, unfortunately, the wheels came off of the Texas bandwagon. The next big hand Texas Mike played saw him flat a 3-bet with 6-5 offsuit and flop a pair versus the nut flush draw of Alan Keating. After some small flop action, turn completed the flush for Keating, giving him the stone cold nuts. Texas Mike had an open ender to hit a straight, and unfortunately for him, he did hit it on the river in a $300,000 pot. This is a very difficult spot for anyone when you have a straight versus a flush, and Texas Mike decided to go for a big value bet.
520.
520,000.
And Texas Mike goes 520. It's only at 205,000 behind. Keating's got the nuts.
Come on.
Keating all in. $1.55 million in there. It's $200,000 to call. That's all that Texas Mike has left. Texas Mike knows that he's almost certainly beat, but he's just getting such a good price right now. He does make the call, and he is all in. He sees the bad news, $1.75 million. And Texas Mike was up over $500,000. He is now down $1 million.
Bit of a cooler here post-flop in this straight versus flush scenario, and Texas Mike is now down $1 million. At this point, Texas Mike only played a few more large hands, including an all-in pre-flop where he had pocket tens up against ace-jack. He's hoping to hold. He holds the flop. He holds the turn. And I feel like we've all been here before. You know what's coming on the river.
Oh no, you win for sure. Oh God.
Good playing, buddy. Good playing, buddy.
See you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, that just happened.
Nice to meet you. Whoever you are, wherever you're from.
That just happened. Oh, that's not even cool.
Even in Portugal, they know that's not.
Yeah, that's not even cool.
There you go. Texas Mike called it. Steve reached for his chips and said, yeah, okay, I'm done. I'm out. It's been fun.
I can't root for myself.
In this hand, Texas Mike has pocket tens once again, but he's up against pocket kings. After some small pre-flop action, we see a flop of king, queen, 3. Kings now firmly in the lead, and Texas Mike should know not to put too much money into the pot with 2 overcards. After some passive action, the river is as bad as it can possibly get. Texas Mike rivers a set of tens, but it's no good up against a set of kings. A set over set for Texas Mike. Brandon knows his customer and checks it over to him, but can't imagine Texas Mike is this strong. Texas Mike decides to overbet the pot, and Brandon decides just to go for the check call in case he's up against a straight. Set over set for $1/3 million. Things just keep getting worse for Texas Mike. In his final hand of the week, Texas Mike has pocket tens once again. This time he gets it all in pre-flop against Alan Keating, who 4-bet calls ace-queen suited pretty liberally. That said, with straddles up this high, not the craziest play, but one most players might be afraid to make for $1 million. All in, tens versus ace-queen suited, and you already know how this ends for Texas Mike.
There's the ace. Texas Mike looking for a 10 now. 10 of spades, 10 of diamonds. Otherwise, Texas Mike has been felted. 6 of spades. And Texas Mike is just lost.
I want to get racked for those.
See you tomorrow, maybe.
Let's get a rack.
Texas Mike is waving the white flag.
All in all, after flirting with victory, Texas Mike posted a $2.23 million loss. But we have to give Texas Mike a lot of credit. First off, a lot of these hands were pretty sick coolers to have to deal with. And maybe he could have played them a little bit better around the edges. But the reality is when you're losing flips and overcards are getting there versus your pairs, and you're hitting straights versus flushes, you're going to lose a lot of money. Not to mention rivering set over set. All in all, I think Texas Mike, of course, playing 75% VPIP or whatever he ended at, not going to be the GTO way to play poker, but it certainly is an entertaining one, and making him one of the crowd favorites, and probably actually the crowd favorite from this week of games. While this is a big loss for Texas Mike, many players, many viewers are hoping to see him come back in the future, and we'll certainly be waiting. Our next story is a little bit different. We're going to talk about the player Tomas, apparently from Portugal. Some people were calling him Barry Thomas. I think as a reference to Barry Sweet. There's no way in hell this guy is Barry Sweet's guys. I don't know who he is, but let's be real. Barry Sweet is not getting invited to play in this game. Yeah, no regs, guys. No Tom Dwan, no Doug, but let's bring in the best poker player online to play in our game. Yeah, that makes sense. I see no... Has to be Barry Sweets. Ryan Feldman, co-founder and producer of Hustler Casino Live, tweeted this out to pump up this guest coming up. People don't understand yet what these next 2 days are going to be like, but you'll be in for a pleasant surprise. We're about to have the most epic 2 days in poker history. The mystery guest is going to blow your minds. Him, Keating, Texas, oh my God, buckle up. What was funny about this tweet is most people took it as the mystery guest is going to be a really famous, well-known person. And the mystery is until you find out during the show. And that guest is going to blow your mind with how well-known they are. But the actual mystery was that the player playing is a mystery. So, technically true. But a lot of people felt a little bit misled by this tweet. Gotta give some credit where credit is due, though. This guy brought the action, playing in many huge pots. Despite it being not nearly his largest pot played, there was a hand that caught a lot of people's attention. A hand where Tomas bet the river with a straight, got called by kings from Steve, and then mucked the winning hand. Now, it is possible we had a card read error, and he actually didn't have 8-7. That does sometimes happen on shows. However, after watching for a couple of days, it seems more likely that he just simply didn't realize he had a straight. So, this should make you feel better at home next time you misread your hand in a $500 pot. Just remember, it could happen to someone for $500,000.
And there you go. Thomas has just made the straight. I mean, you gave Thomas 282 to 1 on his money. I think it was irresistible.
Call.
Steve makes the call.
I didn't hear what you said. Oh, okay.
Alan,
Whoa.
you want 25K chips?
Thomas folded. I'm not sure if he misread his hands.
Should I feel slighted?
Or he thought he was bluffing. Clearly he thought he was bluffing because he pointed to his opponent right away.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
What just
Probably
happened?
don't know this about really high stakes players,
Yeah.
but we wear fanny packs.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
Skeptics might be thinking, okay, no one would actually do that. But I actually have seen it before. In fact, on our stream at Lodge Card Club, we've seen 2 examples where people mucked the actual nuts. I'll show you both of them.
All in and a call. Jay-Win. He didn't realize he got there.
Goodness. Jay-Win.
Oh,
Unless
no.
the cards were read right, he just folded the winning hand.
He just folded the nuts.
Makes the call with ace high.
When it was all I
7
had,
high.
yeah. Probably.
What? He's got the nuts.
Oh my God.
Wait,
Oh my-
what? What is he doing?
Oh shit. Going on.
Skull just laid.
The nuts down?
Shit.
Why?
Skull thought he had 7 high, making the bluff.
In both examples, these pots were smaller, although $19,000 is nothing to sneeze at. The point I wanted to make is simple. Sometimes you just misread your hand or you misremember your hand. I mean, this even happened to Ivy once in a pretty big pot that he played. No two ways about it, Tomas brought the action, ended up losing $2.9 million in a lot of pretty weird hands, including one where he squeezed out of the straddle with H3 offsuit and 4 players called. We had $750,000 going to the flop, guys. I don't think anyone, I've never seen that in my life. 750K in the middle, and we're taking a flop. Let's just see what comes out. I mean, a little gambling never hurt anyone. We're talking about $750,000. Sorry, it just gets me worked up a little bit.
He's going to lead all in. So Thomas was the pre-flop 4-better, and Rahul is just going to lead all in, thinks he just has enough equity here. Santosh folds the 10s.
Sorry,
He does fold, though.
Flop the straight.
Let's run it twice.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You win. You win. You win. You win.
So Rahul profits $600,000.
Probably Tomas's most interesting hand was a hand he played versus Keating, where he checked little over min-raise, bluff jammed the river when Keating had 7-6 for 2 pair. Keating wasn't thrilled about having to call, but ultimately did make the right decision. And players that can make moves like that are a little bit dangerous, but the thing is, once you know they can make those kinds of moves, you can just bet, call, and not worry about it all too much. After that, Tomas had a pretty rough couple of days, losing most of the large pots that he played in, and didn't really seem to have too many spots where he had value bets. In fact, one time he managed to finally hit a set, and he was up against a straight. So, tough session, hard to say how it would have gone if someone had played his cards a little bit better, pretty safe to say he would have booked a loss either way, although they might have been able to save a bit of money with the 8-3 offsuit.
What a crazy run out. I mean, deuces versus ace-king on a queen 10-4 flop. Wow, Thomas folded. That is a crazy good fold.
I did see a lot of people complaining about having a player like this that's not known, but I just want to say you need to have games run. In order for games to run, you need some splashy recreational type players that make it happen. Tomas clearly came to gamble it up, and even though we don't know who he is and probably never will know, he made the show entertaining by helping Hustler Casino Live create good lineups, and for that, we should be thankful. I also think we should be a little bit more easygoing on players that are clearly recreational players when they play hands and not be reviewing them on YouTube in front of thousands of people. Oh, shit. I did it again. Our next story, Alan Keating finally books a win. After many sessions at Hustler Casino Live, Alan Keating lost in just about all of them. There were one or two small wins along the way, but overall he was down several $1 million coming into this week's games. Well, this ended up being a pretty good-sized victory for Alan Keating, with wins in both on days 3 and 4, bringing his total net losses up to just about $1.4 million instead of $3.4. A $2 million victory put Alan at the second spot in winnings for the total week, behind many well-played hands, lots of straddles, a super high VPIP, and generally a performance that people enjoyed watching. We've already seen a lot of Alan Keating's notable hands just by talking about other players, like with Texas Mike ending up flipping, or the straight versus flush, or the 2 pair where Tomas check raised the river, but there were a couple other interesting ones on day 4 to help him book such a large victory. In one of the biggest pots we saw all week, Keating had 10-9 of spades, and on a 5-way flop, flopped an open-ended straight flush draw. Interesting, he decided not to raise the flop versus Raul and instead go for the call, knowing he was running to the nuts with the straight and as well as a strong flush. On the turn, both players don't love this ace, yet they still have the equity to continue, with Raul betting and Keating calling once again. The river is a very fair card, an offsuit 7, giving Raul 2 pair and Keating the nut straight. Keating checks over to Raul, and now Raul bets his 2 pair, hoping to get called thin, and Keating ultimately decides to check jam for all of the money, holding the nuts. A great feeling if I do say so myself. I've heard. I've not gotten to do it that much. Anyway, so back over to Raul. He thinks about this for a very, very, very long time. This is a considerable decision for a lot of money.
All right, man.
He calls 2.4 million, and Keating is back. Keating is back. There it is. Takes a walk. Boom. 2.4 million straight. Alan Keating is back. Leaves Rahul with crumbs. 150K left in Rahul. You see him.
It's basically an $800,000 decision here. And he makes the call and gets shown the bad news. And that ends the evening for Raul. Alan Keating books a win, and I think people were pretty happy to see Alan in there as well. Certainly one of the fan favorites up there with Texas Mike and Tom Dwan. Certainly someone people were excited to see play poker. It is nice for him to finally book a win, and who knows, maybe he'll get off of that biggest losers list, although he still has a few people he needs to jump in front of. Let's hope he doesn't. Oh, I guess you could hope he does. Maybe I should win sometimes. That'd be great. Another source of drama from the $1 million game, famous poker pro blocked on day 4. And we know what we're talking about here. Someone that really wanted to play and is well known for playing high stakes, and people really enjoy watching them online. Talking about Tom Dwan. Tom was announced initially as playing in all 4 of the starting days, but for whatever reason, politics came into play. He could not play on day 4 until coming in much later into the evening. It's unclear exactly what went down there, and when Hustler did tweet this out, Tom Dwan responded with just an angry face, basically unhappy he'd been kicked out of the lineup. That said, he got to play 3 days, and he even got in on the 4th day, so in my opinion, not the biggest of stories, but a little bit different than what people thought they were getting. While we're on the Tom Dwan note, Tom ended up coming back some, but did book a small loss, at least small for these stakes. Obviously, when you're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's still a pretty big loss. But he booked a small loss, evening out some of the winnings he had from last year, where he was the biggest winner. That said, Tom's still number 2 in the all-time winning list. So definitely a lot of winnings for Tom on these shows, but those results will take a bit of a hit. Next storyline, the rise and fall of Action Dan. Over the course of several months, Action Dan was making a name for himself on all of the streams. Playing on Hustler and Lodge, he would play crazy action with lots of re-raising pre-flop, and he was running up quite the stack, peaking at around an $800,000 profit mark. In fact, almost $500,000 of that came on just one show at Poker at the Lodge, where Action Dan put a beatdown on everyone at the table. I was there. It was a beatdown. It's unclear exactly who Action Dan is, but it appears he hails from Toronto, and Feldman talked a bit about it on our warm-up podcast.
We picked the nickname Action Dan because the first couple shows he played, he was just Dan, and we realized, me and Nick were talking, we're like, this guy could be a star. Like, he goes for it, like every spot. It's insane. Like, if there's a hand that you like 4-bet 10% of the time, like he 4-bets it 100% of the time, right? Like, he just does it. He goes for it. He's in hands.
Action Dan's largest pot one coming into this was about $500,000 on Poker at the Lodge versus another $1 million game player, Charlie Hook.
There's the diamond. Hook is just, it's a tough day for Hook.
Hook now beating hands.
Oh my God.
Like ace king, ace queen, ace 10. And it is the nut diamond flush there. That's no good. Flopped, dead.
Here comes the boom.
Dan likely to request all of it and put Hook in the ultimate blender. Table now silent.
There's a place called Hudson on the
All
Bend.
in? All in.
Yeah, no.
And Hook.
Can't believe it. He can't believe it.
After the show, you want to
Oh my God.
Yep. Good bet. Good check in the river.
$493,400 pot.
Unfortunately for Action Dan, his streaming career was about to take a little bit of a dip. Just a small dip. I don't want to get too far down the hands that Dan played because we've already shown them in Peter's massive run-up. But Dan took some absolutely massive beats, losing $400,000 on the first day and $1 million on day 2, ending up leaving after busting the buy-in. You could tell on some of those hands down the stretch a little bit, I think, that Dan was not having the best of times, playing loose aggressive to the bitter end. As a viewer, you can respect that. As a poker player, I have to say maybe he would have tightened up a little bit. I mean, this Queen 9 suited 4-bet versus Tom, a little bit dicey on day 2. That said, the guy came to play, and you can't fault him for that, playing his loose aggressive style even when the stakes are the biggest. Oh shit, that was Queen 8? Yeah, it's a bit on the old loose aggressive side there from Action Dan. But his first name is Action, so what are you gonna do? Only a couple big storylines left here, one of the main ones being that fans were disappointed they didn't get to see more of their favorite poker YouTuber, because Rampage withdrew weeks before the game. In all seriousness, I appreciate the people that wanted to see me play more. It wasn't in the cards this time around. Who knows in the future, but unlikely you'll see me on $1 Million Game in the future. Moving on. Our last story here, a recap of what happened on $1 Million Game from Garrett Adelstein, tweeting out saying, "This week, 2 stars and Doug Polk and Tom Dwan learned why I never trusted anything Feldman said. He had his own agenda and is willing to do say anything necessary to execute it. Helpful when you are used to him, brutal otherwise. No one will step on his toes given his power." This tweet did cause a little bit of a stir, and it got some responses across the board, including one from Nick Vertucci saying, "Not quite the response you were looking for from the heavies. Missed the mark and landed with a thud. But you did snag a few nothing burger jock riders to jump aboard. So there's that." Nick Vertucci referencing my response and Tom Dwan's response to Garrett's tweet. Tom tweeted saying, I see it a bit different from you. I like Ryan. I think he means well. His job is hard, and I think he messed up some this week. No one's going to get it right every time. And also, my opinion could be wrong. I did make about 837 bad calls. That's true, Tom. Although, did you get all of the calls in there? There might have been a couple you missed. I could read you my tweets, but I'll just say it myself. My point is this. I don't blame Ryan for what happened. The reality is running high-stakes games is difficult and people are fickle. That said, I should not put myself in a position where I am beholden to a few key people that can just bail or not be there or not let me into other games. I think it's more of a learning experience for me. I think Feldman has done a lot for poker, building the game, helping people basically get access to viewing the game, learning about poker, and anytime poker gets bigger, it's good for all of us. I also think that he has had a lot of trials and tribulations and has pushed the game forward and poker production forward. Does Ryan make mistakes? Of course. Should he have handled a few things slightly differently? I imagine so. But at the same time, I don't need Ryan Feldman for some reason. I've got my own businesses and games I can play in and my own show and plenty of things going on to where I feel like if I do want to come play, I want it to be for fun. And if I feel like it's not fun, I'm not going to play. But I do not blame Feldman. I think he did his best. I think. Anyway, that's going to be it for me, guys. I think that was a good review. Hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, hit subscribe. I think I might go on a little bit of a video spree here in the near future. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling up to the task. Anyway, hit subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss these videos. I'll see you guys again soon. Thanks.